All right. Good morning, everyone. I'm San Francisco Mayor London Breed, and I am here to welcome home our governor, Gavin Newsom, to make a very, very special announcement. But I do want to start by just really, really thanking the UCSF team, all the runners, all the nurses, all the doctors, all the people who have been on this site since January of this year, vaccinating thousands of San Franciscans. I want to also thank our disaster service workers, people who work for Muni, who work for different city agencies, the library. They have moved from their current responsibilities to be here on site to help make sure that this is a smooth operation. I don't know if any of you've seen, I guess, what they call the pit down there, but for those of you who may not have had a driver's test in many, many years, you may not want to go down there because it's an obstacle course. In any event, today is a good day. Yes, it's a typical foggy day in San Francisco on the west side, but it's still a good day. As of today, over 50% of San Franciscans over the age of 16 have been vaccinated. Yes. And also, 85% of those over the age of 65 have been vaccinated in San Francisco. Our hospitalization rates are at 20 people. Can you believe where we were over a year ago and where we are now today with that many people who are vaccinated? Who would have thought we would be at that place today? San Francisco is currently in the orange tier, and fingers crossed, Governor, we'll be in the yellow tier next week, and we'll be headed home very soon. But guess what, folks? We're still in the pandemic, and we still need to be careful. As you can see, we are still wearing our mask, even though I don't think I know what anybody else looks like here, but we're keeping each other safe. And as we come out of this pandemic, we're going to look back on this time and be so excited and proud for what we accomplished here in San Francisco and the state, and the person who has led this effort to keep Californians safe, to make sure that the hard decisions were made when other states have seen their numbers skyrocket and still refuse to make those hard decisions. He's bared the brunt of the challenges of this pandemic. No one had a playbook written. No one told us we would be dealing with a global pandemic. But our leader, Governor Gavin Newsom, has done an extraordinary job helping to move this state forward, and that's the reason why we are in a very good place. So, ladies and gentlemen, Governor Gavin Newsom.
Thank you, Mayor. Oh, yeah. So thank you, Madam Mayor, very much for the introduction, and thank you for your leadership. Dr. Colfax, let me just acknowledge that you guys have been leading the state in terms of your vaccine efforts, that 80+% for everybody 65 and over, 50% of folks now getting their first dose is substantially higher pace of administered doses than the rest of the state. So I want to compliment you, Mayor, on your extraordinary job, compliment the partnerships that you have established, including the partnership here with UCSF, the community college site, a site that, as the mayor proudly told me, has the capacity to administer over 5,000 shots each and every day. The only constraint is manufactured supply. And I want to remind everybody that we are designing a system here in the state of California that can provide upwards of 5.8 million vaccines to be administered on a weekly basis. Currently, we are receiving about 2.5 million, but we've designed a system that includes this site here that allows us to more than double that capacity. In anticipation, with expectation, that we will be receiving more vaccines. You had noted that everybody now in the state of California, 50 years and up, is now eligible to receive their vaccine. We began that process, established that threshold on April 1st. We are encouraging folks that have not yet signed up to go to My Turn, the statewide platform, to reach out to learn about most proximate site for where you are living to get these doses administered. Today, in the state of California, we are proud to have passed two significant milestones. 20 million administered doses in the state of California and 4 million administered doses under the more important equity metric. Those two milestones, let's put it in perspective, are significant. We have administered more doses than all but 5 nations in the world. The state of California, that 20 million mark, represents over 7 million more doses than any other state in the country. That 4 million on the equity mark, to me, though, as I noted, is more important and significant. This state set a commitment and a audacious goal of providing over 40% or upwards of 40% of all our first doses and providing them under an equity metric in order to deliver on the cause of equity. We still have a lot of work to do in that space. We're mindful of that. But that 4 million mark is as important as the 20 million mark. And today we have formally passed that. So what does that mean? It means a number of things. We're seeing death rates, mortality rates go down. We're seeing case rates stabilize. We have the lowest case rates in the United States of America. Over a 7-day period now, we have a 1.6% positivity rate statewide. We report today 1,367 cases, still prevalent, still deadly, still a challenge that we need to tackle. And that's why we are mindful, as the mayor said, of the imperative and importance of not letting your guard down, not taking off your masks, maintaining your vigilance, and accessing, once your eligibility comes up, these vaccines. In anticipation and expectation that we do all of the above. And by the way, I'll repeat, continuing to wear face coverings, continuing to access vaccines and continuing to administer vaccines in an equitable framework. If we keep the pace, we are moving now beyond the blueprint. We are announcing today that on June 15th, we will be moving beyond the blueprint and we'll be getting rid of the colored tiers. We'll be moving past the dimmer switch. We'll be getting rid of the blueprint as you know it today. That's on June 15th if we continue the good work. We anticipate enough vaccines are coming into the state of California. With 2.5 million people just last week receiving the vaccine, we anticipate over 30 million people will have been vaccinated at least one dose by the end of the calendar month, with the expectation of an abundance of doses coming in from the federal government through the end of this month and into May. We can confidently say by June 15th that we can start to open up as business as usual, subject to ongoing mask wearing and ongoing vigilance. So this is a big day in terms of the pandemic and the journey that we've been on, as the mayor noted, over the course of the last year. And this is an important milestone today, that 20 million and 4 million equity mark. And this is a compliment to all of you, to the mayor, to all the work that's being done by local health officers all up and down the state of California. At the end of the day, the state vision is realized at the local level. And so again, I want to just congratulate and applaud all the local partners, the community-based organizations, all the work that's being done in a very culturally competent manner, in language, all across the state of California, in that real commitment, again, to delivering on the issue of equity. And so I want to thank the mayor. I want to thank Dr. Colfax. I also want to thank Dr. Galley, who has led the charge. We've had a blueprint in place in this state for 31 weeks now. And by the way, 16 counties are moving today into less restrictive tiers in that blueprint, which is further progress. But no one has been more enthusiastic than moving beyond the blueprint than Dr. Galley, but soberly and thoughtfully, led by data, lit by disease prevalence, looking day in, day out, hospitalizations and ICUs, tracking these mutations, and I'll close on that point. We're very mindful of the variants. We're very mindful of mutations. We have sequenced as much or more than any other state. The genomic sequencing that this state does is second to none. 851 UK variants we have sequenced in the state, 10 South African variants, 35 Brazilian variants, close to 9,400 West Coast variants. And we are also tracking a number of other variants, new one from India, which got a little bit of attention this week, this double mutant, this double variant, and also mindful of variants coming from the East Coast, including a New York variant. This is really a race, these vaccines, against the variants, against the mutations. And that's why, again, I will end as I began. It is incumbent upon all of us not to announce mission accomplished, not to put down our guard, but to continue that vigilance that got us where we are today, the lowest case rates, positivity rates, that is, in America. We are seeing bright light at the end of the tunnel. And on June 15th, all things being equal, we continue that good work. We'll have moved beyond that blueprint, and we'll be opening up this economy at business as usual. So with that, we're happy to take any questions. And again, just want to thank everybody for all their extraordinary work.
Thank you, Governor. Guy Marzorati with...
Sorry. I'm doing over there.
Guy Marzorati with KQED. A question about the Coliseum vaccination site. We heard confidence from the Vice President and Senator Padilla yesterday that that site could be extended past next week. Do you have any more details today on how that might work, specifically in regards to the supply of vaccines?
Well, both sites will remain operational, both the Oakland, or rather Alameda site, and the LA site at Cal State LA. Both are remaining operational. It will be seamless operation. The only change is that we're not going to get the direct allocation of vaccines from the federal government. That's the only change. Otherwise, there'll be no perceptible change in a meaningful way to the public. The issue, again, is constraint. The issue is supply, manufactured supply. So we're working with the county, and in the case of Northern California, specific to Alameda County, working with two counties, working with Alameda County and Contra Costa County, forming a regional partnership with FEMA, Cal OES, with those two counties, and we'll be matching the allocations coming from those two counties with the state allocation of vaccines. We were not successful at extending beyond the commitment that the federal government made. And that commitment, by the way, was the first commitment in the United States. So we're very grateful to the Biden administration and to Vice President Harris for their commitment to the state of California. But they made that commitment. They said when that commitment ended, they held to their word, and now we'll be taking over at least the vaccine supply component and matching it with the counties.
Hey, Governor, thanks for doing this. This is Ben Christopher with Cal Matters. So you mentioned June 15th, assuming we meet these conditions, that we're going to be back to a sort of a pre-pandemic business as usual. Does that mean that schools K through 12, June 15th, will be required to open back up or maintain sort of a pre-pandemic posture?
I want kids back in person. I want kids back in school safely for in-person instruction. We've made this crystal clear since we put out a proposal in December. And on June 15th, we anticipate there'll be no barrier to getting all of our kids safely back, not just K through 12, community colleges, including institutions of higher learning. So on June 15th, the answer to your question is yes, affirmatively. We will expect our kids safely back in person instruction to the extent that June 15th calendar is consistent with any ongoing in-person operations, at least K through 14.
So there's an expectation but not a requirement?
There's an expectation across the board. We'll continue to work with the legislature. We'll have more to say as it relates to furthering the cause of expectation. But there'll be no barrier to having our kids back in person instruction, and that is the expectation, and you'll be hearing more about our efforts to more firmly and foundationally advance that cause.
Great, thank you.
Hi, Governor. Fiona Kelleher with the Mercury News. Two questions on the June 15th news. So what standards will you be using in terms of vaccination rates, hospitalization thresholds to make that decision? And secondly, will local jurisdictions be able to maintain stricter rules?
Yeah, look, at the end of the day, we're going to be very mindful of these variants and these mutations. We're mindful of disease spread. We're going to be mindful of hospitalizations. So we're going to watch all of the above. We're going to make sure that we're meeting the equity marks that we've set forth. By the way, we went from 2 million vaccines 23 days ago to 4 million under the equity mark. We anticipate conservatively, again, and this is just assuming an old pace. Let's do the conservative pace. 2.5 million doses last week. By the end of this calendar month, north of 30 million people will be vaccinated with at least one dose in the state, or at least will have administered 30+ million doses. I want to remind everybody that in California currently, there are about 32 million people that are eligible to receive a dose of vaccine. So we're getting to a point where the vaccine administration, and that's just in a month, extrapolated 10 weeks out, we're looking 10 weeks out, that our expectations, the vast majority of people that want, in fact, we believe everybody that will want a vaccine will have had the opportunity not only receive a vaccine, but will have had that second dose of the vaccine. We'll have had the opportunity to see at least a few weeks of those vaccines in people's arms, so the stability and the efficacy of those vaccines will be at peak. We anticipate that the case rates will stabilize, and we anticipate that we will not see a significant increase in hospitalized patients that have received a vaccine. And that's a metric to which we are marking consideration as it relates to our broader surveillance. Dr. Galley, I want to come up. You can talk a little bit more because we have not put precise numerics to that because we're working with the counties. But we broadly are monitoring at least those categories and 5 total categories as it relates to that question.
Thanks, Governor and Mayor. Thanks for hosting us. And Dr. Colfax, thank you for all your hard work. Indeed, we'll be looking at hospitalizations in particular. We're enjoying low hospitalizations across the state. You heard today 20 patients hospitalized in San Francisco with COVID. It's a tremendous number in the face of what we've been through over the last year. But we're particularly concerned about not just the hospitalization numbers, but also who's being hospitalized. Are those who've received the vaccines being hospitalized? We're looking internationally on the East Coast and the Midwest, and we're seeing many of those who are hospitalized today with COVID as those who have not yet received the vaccine. So the governor's point that this is a race, basically, between vaccines and variants and additional cases is key. So we're going to keep a close eye, not just on that hospitalization rate and number, but actually understanding who's in the hospital and whether those who are vaccinated are the ones who are hospitalized. If that is the case, and we see a number of people who are hospitalized that have received the vaccine, that's a different level of concern, and we'll be talking about that, like the governor said, with our local partners. Looking at vaccine supply, we often talk about accessibility, ability to get a vaccine in a timely way. So looking at, what's reasonable to get a vaccine, a couple of weeks from people's interest to being able to get that vaccine appointment is going to be a key marker that we'll be watching closely. Taking feedback from our county partners, our pharmacy partners, our federally qualified health centers, our big health systems to make sure that all individuals who are eligible have a chance to get vaccinated in a timely way. And then looking at that approximately 8-week period, a couple weeks to get the vaccine or to get the appointment, and then about 6 weeks further down the road to see both shots administered. And then that couple of weeks to begin to see peak antibody response so people can enjoy that protection and move around the state and our counties with confidence.
Governor, follow up on the Oakland Coliseum site. With the state allocating and matching that allocation with the counties, ultimately, what are the numbers going to be like in terms of the number of people getting vaccinated at that site under the FEMA plan and under the plan with the state and the counties?
Yeah, we're working through the details. It's, again, it's determination on the basis of what those two counties could put up, and we'll match. Same down in Southern California. So they currently are operating at about 6,000 a day. They have a couple mobile sites. In addition to that, anywhere from 6 to 7,500, depending on the day. So baseline of about 42,000 a week. But remember, this is not a zero-sum game. They're significantly increasing supply directly to pharmacies, coming from direct allocations from the federal government. Walmart, Costco, among others, last week, are new pharmacies that are part of the pharmacy program. We're also increasing the number of options at federally qualified health centers. So there's multiple strategies. When these two FEMA sites came up, we're living in a different frame, a different world. Mass vaccination sites now represent just those two sites, a little less than, well, roughly 3% of the statewide distribution and allocation of vaccines. So we're in a different place. Those sites are important. They're up. They're operational. They're turnkey. We want to keep them up. We've been crystal clear with the federal government about that. We tried hard to get more direct doses of the vaccine. They're competing. We're competing with 50 other states. I can assure you it's just for what it's worth. I've talked to a number of the governors. They're a little envious that California got 2 sites, and we were the first state to get the 2 sites. Many other states, vast majority, haven't even gotten 1 site. So that's what we're competing up against with the federal government. And so they made commitment to us. They fulfilled that commitment. And now we're working through with the counties to figure out what their doses are on the basis of this. And the reason we can't answer that question is that the question requires new updated information from the federal government. This morning, we received word that we'll get about 16.5 million doses of Pfizer and Moderna nationwide, and then a variable on the J&J. We're translating what that means for California and what that means for Contra Costa and Alameda. Once they have that information, we got that about 2 hours ago. Once they have that information, they're going to figure out their allocation. We'll figure out our match, and we'll be able to answer that question.
But can we
as soon as
expect that
possible.
number to be lower?
I wouldn't expect anything until we work through those numbers.
Regarding mask mandates, about a third of the states across the country have lifted their mask mandates or have never had them in place. When do you anticipate the state of California lifting that mask mandate?
We're not anticipating in the short run lifting the mandate for masks. We think it's incredibly important. It's the most powerful and important non-pharmaceutical intervention we can do to mitigate the spread of this disease. And I want to remind people that this disease continues to be deadly, not only here in the state, across this country. And the disease didn't take Easter weekend off. It's not taking this week's spring break off. This disease is as deadly as it's ever been. The only thing that we have done is we have suppressed the spread. We've mitigated that spread because of the number of vaccines that have been administered, because of the antibodies that are in, that have obviously significantly increased across the state and country, and because of mask wearing. And so we are committed to extinguishing this disease, and we don't have any short-term goals as it relates to lifting the mask mandate.
Hi, Governor. Stephanie Sierra with ABC7. 2 questions here. The first being just a follow-up to what you just alluded to a moment ago. How many vaccine doses do you expect California will be receiving weekly by early May? And secondly, given that indoor venues will be able to reopen assuming criteria is met, what is the state doing to crack down on fake vaccination cards?
So as it relates to vaccines, 2 weeks ago we received 1.8 million. Last week, 2.1 million. This week, 2.4 million. I just referenced, just had a call, governor's call, weekly call with Jeff Zients, who runs the task force for the Biden administration, and they set out the federal allocations. We're translating that. Again, we just got those a couple hours ago. And once that information is, once we receive that detailed information, then we present that to the counties. We present that publicly to you in real time. I anticipate those numbers to continue to go up. The one variable remains J&J. The stabilization on Pfizer and Moderna, we have more confidence in the short run. J&J, we have lots of confidence in the medium run and long run, meaning the short term with J&J variability begins to give way to more confidence in May that J&J will substantially come in at a much higher and more predictable number of manufactured supply. But the issue of supply, we have confidence that the numbers will continue to tier up and that by May we'll be in that frame that President Biden made clear a few months back when he said by May, every eligible American that wishes to access and get a vaccine will have the ability to schedule that access. And I believe that to be the case in May as well.
Hi, Governor Andres with Telemundo. Are you worried about the cases going up in some counties, like, for example, Alameda?
Yeah, we're always mindful, and every day, first thing we do is we wake up and look at the case rates. We look at it by region. The Bay Area has seen a modest increase in the last number of days. Statewide, we've seen a decrease. As I noted, 1,367 cases statewide. Put that in perspective, New York had over 6,700, state half our size. Florida over 4,700, much smaller state. California less than 1,400. Now, we were 2,400 a few days ago, so it bounces back and forth. Positivity rate, though, has remained over a 7-day period at 1.7%, or 1.6 today, 1.7, 1.8 the last few days. So, yes, every day we are cautious, we're mindful, and every day someone gets a vaccine, every moment that goes by, and another one of these cars that goes through is another triumph moment in this race against variants, in a race to keep these cases at a minimum.
Hi there, Lily Tan with NBC Bay Area. How can you ensure people from other states who have lax rules about COVID don't come into California and reintroduce COVID into our population when we are moving towards herd immunity? And secondly, once June 15th passes, could the tier system come back afterwards if our rates go back up?
Well, look, the one thing we're mindful of is, you don't know what you don't know. With these mutations, with these variants, with the reality that they're experiencing in places like India, Germany, Italy, France, the challenges they're seeing around the rest of the world, the fact you're seeing increased cases in other states, 16 plus states have seen pretty significant increases in the last few weeks. You got to be open to argument, interested in evidence. So there's always the prospect. We're always going to be led by data, led by reality, and the lived experience on the ground. But our expectation is, if we're vigilant, if we don't spike the ball, if we don't, announce mission accomplished, if we continue to do the good work that we've done, that by June 15th we'll be beyond that blueprint and we'll be back to a sense of normalcy. But again, mindful of the importance of masking, particularly indoors. As it relates to the issue of people coming from overseas, or for that matter, even out of state, we are aligning our efforts very closely with the CDC and the recommendations. Just last week, we made an update to our state guidelines as it relates to travel restrictions. We had a 120-mile restriction. We brought in that statewide. We have very specific language that was updated in that guidance that we put out last week as it relates to out-of-state travelers. And we put up guidelines as it relates to international travelers, particularly those seeking to join conventions here in the state, and requirements around vaccinations and testing. And so the concern is real. We maintain strict guidelines in that space, and we'll continue to monitor based upon what's actually happening, not what we want to happen, but actually what is truly occurring in real time.
Hi, Governor. Megan Bobrowski from the San Francisco Chronicle. I have two questions. First one is, come April 15th, will the state be able to meet will the supply be able to meet the demand for vaccines, and will people be able to sign up early before April 15th to get the vaccine? And the second question is, I know Alameda County previously said they aren't able to take over the Coliseum by Sunday. Will the state then be leading the effort, or what is the...
No, FEMA's... thank you for the question, because I really want to clear this once for all. The site's going to continue to operate. FEMA is going to continue to provide the support. They've been crystal clear about that for some time. There's just been ambiguity, and I guess I'm appreciating the nuance. There's been ambiguity about only one thing, and that's supply, direct allocation of supply. And we fought hard to get that supply extended. They couldn't do it. So with that in mind, we'll figure out the supply, but all the money that they've supported that operation and backed that operation with, will continue to flow, and all the personnel that we need will continue to flow and support that operation. We have augmented our efforts beyond just that site, and will continue to increase the total number of available opportunities for people to access these life-saving vaccines. As it relates to, again, the details as it relates to supply, we'll be forthcoming about that when we have more clarity later, hopefully this afternoon, once we're able to assess that 3-week window in terms of the supply coming in to the state. And forgive me, the first part of your question?
Sure. Will residents 16 and older be able to sign up for the vaccine before April 15th?
Yeah, you can go to the My Turn app, but again, not everybody's on My. So the reason this is a nuanced question, the answer is yes with the My Turn. Other counties may still be working through their old systems, but the idea is to get everybody scheduled. But let's make this crystal clear. By April 15th, if millions of people try to get a vaccine, it's going to take some time. It's going to take a number of weeks. It's going to extend perhaps over a month until we have the available supply. Again, we're still constrained by supply, but the eligibility will open up, so the opportunity to access will be made available to everybody 16 and over. And by the way, we hope to drop that eligibility from 16 down to 12 once the FDA approves the eligibility for 12 to 16-year-olds. So we'll try to mark and progress in parallel with the CDC. But again, I caution everybody, on April 15th, we don't anticipate a substantial increase in available supply beyond what we are receiving this week. Modest, but not substantial.
Hey, Governor, Jeremy White with Politico. I think there is an expectation as we move into the recovery phase that that will be the focus of the legislature. Your State of the State speech was very focused on recovery, not delving too much into other policy areas. But there are a lot of ambitious bills out there, everything from banning fracking to single-payer health care to police decertification. Is there the capacity or the appetite to take on some of these big issues this year, particularly those that could be economically disruptive, or do you think the legislature and your policy team need to be narrowly focused on economic recovery?
Economic recovery is, to me, significant, not narrow, but I get the broader point. We haven't backed off on making transformational change. We're not backing away from our efforts with CalAIM. This is a once-in-a-generation opportunity to completely reimagine our substance abuse, behavioral health, and mental health delivery system here in the state of California. We were not timid. We were quite bold in January, anticipating a modest surplus that's grown substantially. Surplus well in excess of $25 billion today. That doesn't even include the $26+ billion we'll be receiving from the federal government from the stimulus. So we want to be as bold as the challenges are big in this state, and we'll continue to support transformational ideas and thinking. But we're also mindful a lot of the surplus, not a lot, vast majority is one-time in nature. We're going to maintain our fiscal stance, our fiscal prudence. We have the highest reserves in state history. We're going to be paying down more money on our long-term obligations, pension obligations, than any other time in our state's history. Our bond ratings, one of the highest it's been in over 2 decades. We'll continue to do what we can to set aside dollars for a rainy day. But we are mindful that economic recovery has to be focused on equity and those that have been disproportionately impacted by this pandemic. And so we'll continue, as we have in the last number of months, to prioritize and target our efforts, relief efforts, and recovery efforts in that manner. But no, the answer to your question, Jeremy, is we're committed to being bold and transformational, but we're also mindful that we cannot oblige or obligate dollars over the long term that we don't have. And so we'll continue to also be pragmatic in that respect.
Thank you, Governor. And then I had a quick follow-up on your earlier response about the mask mandate, which you said you have no intention to get rid of in the short term, the virus remaining deadly. But if we get to the point in mid-June where hospitalizations are low, vaccines are widely available, might you then contemplate lifting the mask mandate if we've hit these other indicators?
Yeah, look, we're open argument. We're interested in evidence. This is the disease, the data will make that determination. It won't be done on a political whim, won't be determined out here in sunny west side of San Francisco, early part of August. I mean, this disease continues to be rampant, continues to be deadly. You're seeing disease spikes and surges in other parts of the country, driven by youthful exuberance, literally and figuratively, as well as these variants. And so all of these things are factors, including the lived experience around the rest of the world. So we're very sober about this. We do not subscribe to the point of view of some of these other states. You know, there are few, you know, baseball fans that I'd take a back seat to, but I was disappointed to see some of those images of, you know, tens of thousands of strangers packed into a stadium without any mask mandate. And opening day the other day or yesterday, one of those states, it's just not, that's not the lead we're going to follow here in the state of California. We're going to follow lead of Dr. Galley and Colfax and others and continue to be sober and mindful of this disease and this pandemic.
Last question.
Hi, Governor. This is
By
Sean.
the way, you remember, the mayor's still here, and she's always available for any questions. Forgive me, Mayor. God bless you.
Hi, Governor. This is Sean Huang from World Journal. Just one question. Because people who over the age 16 can be ejected since April 15. So can you talk the support of vaccines from federal government?
For people give me again the support from the federal government that's come from.
So can you talk the support of vaccines from federal government?
The broader support specific to the vaccines?
Yeah.
Well, the support we're receiving from the federal government is extraordinary, and I just want to note that it's come in many different ways. We're getting direct support for these 2 mass vaccination sites that will continue in the state of California, both in Alameda and in LA. That support will continue in terms of personnel and reimbursements in partnership with FEMA and the Office of Emergency Services, and with the support of the counties, LA, including Contra Costa and Alameda County. We've relieved direct financial support for direct vaccines. Again, I remind people, you can get a vaccine regardless of your immigration status, your ability to pay. Vaccines are free. And I want to encourage everybody 50 and over today to get a vaccine. On April 15th, everybody 16 and over will be eligible for a vaccine. We are in a race against these variants, and I want to encourage everybody that hasn't availed themselves to do so. And the sooner we do that, we truly can turn the page, move away from this blueprint by June 15th. Continue to do what you've done to get us to where we are today, among the lowest positivity rates in the country, mindful always of these mutations. I want to again thank Dr. Galley and Colfax and thank Mayor Breed for extraordinary leadership, and thank you to the partnerships here at UCSF Community College and one of the larger vaccination sites, not only in San Francisco, but in Northern California. We appreciate everybody being out here today. Thank you.